Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are on a truly unique mission. We're not looking at a huge historical event or a war that spans decades.
No, not at all. We're going hyper-focused, almost microscopic, you could say.
We are going to analyze a single 60-minute window in the life of one woman, Clarissa Dalloway, from the moment she decides to leave her house to navigate the streets of London.
That's right. And what we have, our source material, it gives us this stunningly intimate look inside her head, her inner world, and it's set right against the huge, messy, complicated reality of the world outside.
So we're treating this hour as a real-time event. We're going to follow her, analyze every thought, every little social interaction, every shock, as if it's happening live.
Exactly. And the mission really is to get under the surface, to uncover the intense, profound stuff happening beneath what seems like a completely mundane action. She just needs to buy a pair of gloves.
And it starts with such a simple, clear statement of intent. She says, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the gloves herself.
That one line is so important, isn't it? It's an act of deliberate personal autonomy. She's not sending a servant, which would be the norm.
She wants to do it herself.
She's choosing to engage, to step into the noise, the vitality of the city, instead of staying shielded inside her home. And the second she does, the moment she steps out, the external world just race-like. It immediately imposes itself on her.
Okay, let's unpack this intense hour. And it all begins with the sound that really governs all of London, the striking of the clock, which immediately pits this grand idea of time against her own internal world.
The very first thing she senses is Big Ben. It's striking 11 o'clock. But what's so incredible is how it's described. It's not just marking the time. It's setting an emotional and philosophical stage right from the get-go.
And it's a complete contradiction, isn't it? The source says the hour is fresh as if issued to children on a beach.
I love that image. It's so hopeful. It suggests this, this limitless potential. The day is a clean slate. It's unspoiled, like a huge empty beach full of possibility.
But then you get the sound itself, and that feeling of freshness just gets undercut instantly.
Completely, because the strokes are solemn and deliberate. Big Ben isn't, joyfully inviting her into the day. It's delivering this very measured, very serious reminder that life is finite.
It's the relentless march of time.
It is.
Yeah.
And for her generation, you have to remember, this is right after the war. That march of time had taken an absolutely enormous toll. So that solemn sound is the backdrop for everything else she's about to see.
And she hears it all, the murmur of wheels and the shuffle of footsteps, and she immediately understands that sound. She processes it into this broader awareness of the city's suffering.
She gets it. She knows not everyone out there is on an errand of happiness. She feels that rush of life. But she also recognizes the hardship, the urgency just beneath the surface.
That awareness even extends to the symbols themselves. She has this fleeting thought about Big Ben, that it's nothing but steel rods consumed by rust if it's not cared for by HM's Office of Works.
Which is such a powerful thought.
Yeah.
I mean, she's saying that even the great symbols of national stability and strength, of timelessness, they're fragile.
They're subject to decay.
Exactly. They need this constant, mundane maintenance just to keep from crumbling. So right away, she's connecting the frailty of this grand clock to the frailty of human life itself.
It's a massive philosophical idea right there on the pavement. But then, just as quickly, she pulls back inward. She notes that for her, in this very moment, right here, things are complete.
And what makes them complete is memory. It just floods in.
It's not a slow, gentle thing. It's a rapid-fire dive into her deepest past.
And for Clarissa, you can tell that her childhood isn't just nostalgia. It's not something she looks back on fondly. It's an active source of strength. It's what makes her feel whole right now.
We get these incredibly vivid snippets. Her father, Justin Perry, who she remembers as a fine fellow.
But then immediately she complicates it, right? She adds that he was weak on the bench.
That one detail is so telling. Even in what should be this sacred childhood memory, her adult mind is there, assessing, acknowledging the complexity. She sees the charm, but she also sees the weakness. She's always analyzing.
Always. And the memories are so sensory. It's the scent of flowers at evening, the very specific, almost melancholy sound of the caw of rooks falling from ever so high. It's a whole landscape of security built from sound and smell.
And the triggers for this are so small. That's what's so amazing. It's not a big monument or a photograph that does it.
No, it's a leaf of mint. Or a teacup with a blue ring on it. That's all it takes to bring back this foundational past. It shows you how intensely she lives through her senses.
So she's weaving together history, these grand ideas, and her own personal past, all within a few steps. But then Just like that, the present snaps back, and it's violent.
And as she has this thought, poor little wretches, probably thinking about all the suffering on the street she just acknowledged. And then, bam, chaos.
This poor kid, Jimmy Dawes, he runs right under the horses' noses. It's just this sudden, terrifying, unpredictable moment of city life.
It's so visceral. Her physical composure is just gone. She's left stretching her hand out over the curb, this instinctive, protective gesture.
And the kid, this little demon, he's just grinning on the other side, completely oblivious to the danger.
And that moment of lost poise, that outstretched hand, it's seen, it's observed by someone passing by. Scope Purvis, CB.
We should probably pause on him for a second. CB means companion of the bath. This is a man of the system.
A high-level civil servant. He's part of the official London that Big Ben represents. He's hurried, he's on his way to work, and he just takes her in for a second.
And his judgment of her is so crucial. He sees a charming woman, poised, eager, strangely white-haired for her pink cheeks.
That description is just packed with tension, isn't it? The white hair speaks to time, to the weight of her 50-plus years, maybe to recent stress. But the pink cheeks suggest, what? Vibrancy? Health? Or maybe a kind of feverish internal energy?
A deep intensity that's hidden by the poise he sees. She's a walking contradiction.
Absolutely. And as she's waiting for this van to pass, Dirtnell's van, this piece of mundane commerce, Big Ben strikes again. The 10th, the 11th stroke.
And the source says the sounds are like leaden circles dissolved in the air.
It's during that slow dissolving of time that she pulls herself together. Her posture physically stiffens. And this is where we really understand her core principle, the armor she wears.
Pride held her erect, inheriting, handing on, acquainted with discipline and with suffering.
That's not just vanity. It's a philosophy. It's a chosen posture of resilience that she feels connects her to a whole lineage of people who have endured. She is literally standing up straight against the weight of it all.
And that pride, it comes from knowing pain, specifically the suffering of others in her circle. She thinks of Mrs. Foxcroft at the embassy party just the night before.
This woman, covered in jewels, but she's eating her heart out. The grief is layered. First, her nice boy was dead. That's the core tragedy, the post-war grief that's everywhere.
But it's more than that. It's also that she's losing the old manor house.
Right. And as she's thinking this, Dirtnell's van passes by, that symbol of commerce and change. It just emphasizes how personal tragedy and these broader historical social changes are all tangled up. For Clarissa, discipline isn't just about controlling her own feelings.
No, it's about holding up the whole social structure that allows people like Mrs. Foxcroft to keep functioning, to show up at the embassy even when they're heartbroken.
She connects her own personal need for discipline to this collective suffering, to the legacy of the war, to the need to keep things running. And that external rush, that flow of life, it leads her straight into an unexpected social encounter.
Right. From these huge thoughts about grief and empire, we zoom right into the slightly awkward small talk of an old acquaintance.
And there he is, Hugh Whitbread. He pops up near a china shop and he raises his hat, rather extravagantly.
That detail feels important. It's not just a polite gesture, it's a performance, isn't it?
It's a whole performance. It shows he's sticking to this very specific, maybe even slightly old-fashioned, code of formal courtesy. It's all about class and respect, rooted in the fact that they've known each other since they were children.
And Clarissa starts the conversation, and maybe she's still feeling that energy from her walk because she's really enthusiastic. She says she loves walking in London, that it's better than walking in the country.
Which is an interesting thing to say. Is she being genuine? Or is she performing a kind of modern, engaged attitude? Whatever it is, Hugh's response just deflates the whole mood.
He says they're up, unfortunately, to see doctors. And just like that, the conversation shifts from pleasantries to, health, anxiety, mortality.
And Clarissa's response shows how sharp she is. She doesn't offer some vague sympathy. She goes right to the heart of it. Millie, she knows who matters.
But Hugh is purposefully vague back to her, out of sorts, that sort of thing.
In social code, you don't discuss medical details on the street. It's an evasion. And he quickly pivots back to her world, asking about her husband, Dick.
To which she gives this really robust, almost competitive answer. First rate.
First rate. It's a way of saying, our house is in order. The whole exchange is just loaded with unspoken information. As she walks away, her mind is already processing.
Right. She immediately figures out the truth about Millie, that it must be about her age, 50-52. Hugh's tone, his evasion, it all communicated the real meaning without him having to say a word.
And this leads her to think about Dear old Hugh. And we get this incredible, almost cynical little note in parentheses.
One would rather die than speak to one's brother.
It's a huge clue to their relationship. It's familiar, it goes way back to childhood, but it's always been formal and, weirdly, safe. There's none of the messy emotional or sexual tension she might feel with other men. He's safe because he's like a brother, but without any of the actual intimacy.
And that safety, that formal respect he shows her, that's the key, isn't it? It's what triggers this massive philosophical leap in her mind.
It is. This tiny, mundane chat about doctors makes her question the entire structure of society. She asks herself, how then could women sit in Parliament? How could they do things with men?
This is really the core of her social philosophy, and we need to unpack it. She talks about an extraordinarily deep instinct, something inside one. You can't get over it. What is this instinct she's talking about?
Well, from what we can gather, it's a belief in an inherent structural difference between men and women that dictates how power should work. It's not that she thinks women are less intelligent.
No, not at all. It's that she's rejecting the whole idea of competing with men in that aggressive public way, the way you'd have to in Parliament.
Exactly. She sees a different, deeper, and maybe even more influential way of operating. And the most important part is what she values in Hugh, that men like him respect it without our saying it.
That unspoken understanding, that's what she prizes. The implicit agreement that there is a difference, and that difference allows for a kind of mutual admiration without competition.
It's a kind of quiet power she believes in. It's a way of maintaining dignity. If you acknowledge this deep instinct, then you have your own sphere where you're valuable and protected by tradition. You don't have to fight and claw your way up, which she sees as vulgar and messy.
So this little run-in with Hugh just reconfirms her entire belief system. It anchors her back into this traditional order she's trying to uphold.
And feeling that sense of order confirmed, she walks right into the heart of the architectural symbols of the empire she's a part of.
She's on the official spine of London now. She passes through the Admiralty Arch and sees the big statue of Queen Victoria.
And her description of it is fantastic. She sees it as a white mound, full of billowing motherliness, amplitude, and homeliness.
But just like with Big Ben, she immediately adds a contradiction. She finds Victoria always ridiculous, yet how sublime.
That's the tension right there. The ridiculous part is all the fussy, sentimental stuff from the Victorian age. But the sublime part is the undeniable power, the historical weight of the woman who ruled the world.
And she connects that feeling to her childhood, to Nanny telling her to stop dead still and bow to the Queen.
The awe is drilled into her from a young age. It's an inherited duty. But the ridiculous comment is her adult critique. She knows that following this tradition is a little absurd, but she also feels it's necessary.
She then looks up and sees the flag flying above the palace, which means the king and queen are home. And she immediately justifies their importance, not just through history, but through personal experience.
Right. Her husband, Dick, had lunch with the queen and told her she was a thoroughly nice woman.
It's such a practical assessment, isn't it? The monarchy is useful because they're good, functional people.
And Clarissa thinks about why this matters. It matters so much to the poor, she thinks, and to the soldiers.
Why them specifically?
Because in her view, they're the ones who need structure the most. The monarchy is a kind of social glue, a symbol of stability and care for the disadvantaged and for the people who risk their lives for the nation.
And that idea of sacrifice is immediately reinforced. She sees the monument, the man in bronze with a gun for the South African War. It ties the national identity directly to military sacrifice.
As she walks toward Buckingham Palace itself, she links its architecture directly to national psychology. She sees it as four square in the broad sunshine, uncompromising plain.
Solid, reliable, no frills.
And she calls that character something inborn in the race. It's a belief that this kind of stoicism is an inherent British quality.
And then comes the imperial angle. She thinks this character is what Indians respected.
This really reveals her worldview. She's justifying the entire imperial project through this idea of an inherent national character that naturally commands respect around the globe.
She sees the monarchy doing its job. The queen went to hospitals, opened bazaars. It's not about magic or divine right. It's a routine of public service.
And she sees that routine play out right in front of her. A car comes out of the gate, soldiers salute, the gates shut. It's the silent, smooth machinery of power just ticking along.
And after witnessing all that order, she crosses the road and enters the park. But she keeps her posture. She's still holding herself upright.
That physical posture is her psychological defense, isn't it?
Mm.
She moves from the formal stone of the palace into the chaotic, natural life of the park.
Yeah.
But she refuses to relax her composure. She brings that discipline with her.
And that transition from stone to nature takes us right into the heart of the really intense personal questions the city's forcing on her.
The park is just teeming with life. It's June. Every leaf is drawn out. And the details are so raw, so naturalistic. Mothers of Westminster with mottled breasts gave suck.
It's life at its most basic, reproduction, survival, and right next to that you have respectable girls lay stretched on the grass, a kind of modern relaxation.
The whole scene is sprawling and alive.
Yeah.
But then you get this one strange detail. An elderly man, stooping very stiffly, picking up a crumpled piece of paper, smoothing it out, and then flinging it away.
It's such a peculiar little act, an attempt to impose order on the chaos, a kind of obsessive fastidiousness that just stands out.
But the relative peace of the park is shattered for her by a memory of the ugliness of high society from the night before at the embassy. She remembers this horrible thing Sir Dighton said.
His statement of pure entitlement, "If I want a fellow to hold my horse, I have only to put up my hand."
It's the absolute peak of the aristocratic mindset, isn't it? The assumption of instant obedience from the lower classes. And it makes her recoil.
But then right after that, he pivots and offers what she calls an extraordinarily interesting opinion.
He says the religious question is far more serious than the economic.
Which just shows you the hierarchy of their world. He casually dismisses the economic reality of the common person, but he's happy to engage in these abstract intellectual arguments.
And then that abstract talk gets grounded in real tragedy. He starts talking of his own accord about dear Jack Stewart and laments, "Oh, the country will never know what it has lost."
So you go from arrogance to intellectualism to genuine personal grief from the war. Clarissa just absorbs all this energy.
She does. She mounts the little hill lightly, and the air itself feels charged. She feels the city vibrating. Messages were passing from the fleet to the Admiralty. She calls it a divine vitality which Clarissa loved.
And this energy sends her back into her own memories of youth, the joy of riding, dancing, talking about books. She remembers the priggishness of being young, but also the fierce conviction.
And that happy memory leads to a painful comparison with her present. Middle age is the devil, she thinks.
This feeling of decline is immediately contrasted with the fallen hero, Jack Stewart. He never once thought of death, knew he was dying. And crucially, he can never mourn.
That's the key idea. The dead are at peace. They're safe from the pain and decay of living, from the devil of middle age. And this huge existential thought triggers her defense mechanism.
Poetry. The words just run through her head and make her stand up straight again. From the contagion of the world's slow stain, and have drunk their cup a round or two before.
The contagion of the world's slow stain. That's her private name for it all, isn't it? The slow degradation, the grief, the decay, the compromises that middle age forces on you. The poetry is her shield against it.
And the ghost of Jack Stewart comes back. She remembers him shouting Shelley and Piccadilly, hating frumps. My God, Clarissa. That memory of his pure, youthful judgment pushes her out of her thoughts and back toward the city, back to business.
She enters the commercial flow of Piccadilly now. She's passing these iconic London landmarks, but she's seeing a city that's constantly changing, destroying its own past.
She sees Lady Burdett Coutts' house with the parrot, but she also sees that Devonshire House is without its gilt leopards.
The leopards are gone because the historic mansion was torn down for new construction. She's walking through a world where tradition is constantly giving way to modern commerce. It's in a state of flux.
And yet, amidst all this change, she's anchored by these tiny social duties. She has to remember to leave a card for Mrs. Jepson at Claridge's.
And this leads to a judgment, but a balanced one. Rich Americans can be very charming. She's always assessing, weighing things up.
She gets a moment of respite at Hatchard's big shop. She stops to look at a frontispiece and a book of memoirs. She sees this arch, bright, demure girl.
And she idealizes this image. She calls her the only real sort of girl and immediately connects that ideal to her own daughter, Elizabeth.
This little stop triggers a whole sequence of literary judgments. She thinks of the silly book Soapy Sponge, but then of Shakespeare's sonnets, which she knows by heart.
And then we get this absolutely shocking revelation about her marriage. She remembers arguing about the dark lady in the sonnets, and then this incredible detail. She married Dick because he had never read Shakespeare.
What a choice. She actively chose someone who wasn't an intellectual, someone who wouldn't challenge her in that specific, maybe pedantic way.
She shows stability, grounding. She rejected the potential conflict of an intellectual partner for Dick's straightforward, less demanding nature.
Then she thinks pragmatically again. She needs a cheap book for Millie and settles on Cranford. A gentle, classic choice.
It confirms her whole worldview. For all the great things, one must go to the past. She repeats her poetic line about death, fear no more the heat of the sun, and concludes that the moderns had never written anything one wanted to read about death. Modernity just lacks the gravity she needs.
And then the outside world rushes back in. The traffic is a stream, a river of machines, and she starts firing off these rapid-fire judgments about the people inside the cars.
It's social critique at lightning speed. A girl in an open car looks washed out. Clarissa feels a flicker of empathy. She knows what it's like to be up dancing till 4.
But the judgment immediately hardens. The fat lady in the next car gets a torrent of silent disapproval. Daimots and orchids at this hour. No, no, no.
It's a breach of decorum, of taste. Then the girl with the painted eyes is utterly unattractive. She is policing the world according to her own strict internal code of conduct.
But all that chaos immediately yields to order. The admirable policeman raises his hand, and Clarissa, acknowledging his sway, crosses into Bond Street.
She submits to that authority willingly. It's a perfect little microcosm of her whole philosophy. Order and discipline are essential, and she adheres to them, even just crossing the street.
And entering Bond Street grounds her in history. This isn't just a shopping street for her, it's a corridor of her own lineage.
Exactly. She thinks about her great-great-grandfather, Seymour Perry, walking down the same street 100 years ago. She sees herself as a link in a chain.
She observes the high-end shops, a roll of cloth at her father's tailor, an incredibly expensive jar, thick pink salmon on the ice block.
It's the whole lifestyle of her class laid out for her. She sees the jewels, pink and orange stars, paste, Spanish, chains of old gold. But then her practical side kicks in again.
One must economize. Even here, surrounded by luxury, the reality of the post-war economy and her age imposes caution.
She passes a gallery and dismisses the odd French pictures as thrown confetti. It confirms her artistic standards. She believes if you live with real art, you can't be taken in by a joke. She values history and authenticity over fleeting modern trends.
And then comes the big social moment. The traffic is clogged, and through the congestion, she sees her, Lady Bexborough.
And she's described like a queen at a tournament, raised regal. She is the absolute epitome of what Clarissa admires.
Lady Bexborough is dressed in black, quite shabby, but her appearance extraordinarily tells.
It's breeding over fashion. It signals self-respect, tradition, and a disciplined life where you never gossip. She's the ideal of restrained, powerful conduct.
And Clarissa's reaction is just raw yearning. She would have given anything to be like that, to have that status, that public role, talking politics like a man.
But then comes the devastating irony, because Clarissa knows the secret. The grand public performance hides total private desolation.
She knows Lady Bexborough has nothing to live for. Her husband is failing, and she's sick of it all.
And that clash between the perfect, majestic exterior and the heartbreaking internal reality, it just shatters Clarissa. The weight of that shared, silent suffering is so heavy that the tears actually rose to her eyes as she entered the shop.
Her fierce discipline finally buckles. This is the most acute emotional moment of her entire walk.
She steps out of that intense emotional space and into the quiet, transactional world of the glove shop. But she brings that weight with her.
She immediately puts on her social face, though. "Good morning," she says, with her charming voice and exquisite friendliness, asking for white gloves above the elbow.
It's a performance, the perfect, gracious customer. But then she looks at the shopwoman, and time hits her again. It's not the young girl she remembers. The woman is quite old. It's another sharp reminder of her own aging.
The first gloves don't fit, a small moment of physical imperfection.
While she's waiting, she notices the only other customer. And her judgment is so aesthetic and so cruel, she sees her as vacant, like a figure on a Japanese fan.
She projects her own fears onto this woman, doesn't she? The fear of being empty, meaningless. And this woman is also struggling with gloves that are too large at the wrist. The perfect fit is elusive for everyone.
And Clarissa's mind jumps to her party, to the stress, ordering chairs, ices, flowers, the fear that the people she didn't want would come, the others wouldn't. The party is her attempt to create a perfect social world, and she's terrified it will be flawed.
The shop itself reinforces this anxiety. The silk stockings, quivering silver, remind her of her Uncle William's rule. A lady is known by her gloves and her shoes.
And that leads straight to the thought. It would be intolerable if dowdy women came to her party. She even has a whimsical thought about it. Would one have liked Keats if he had worn red socks? Shows how fashion, intellect, and social control are all tied up together in her mind.
Then she reaches out. She tries to connect with the shopgirl beyond the transaction. She asks, "Do you remember before the war you had gloves with pearl buttons?"
And that specific detail, the perfectly simple French gloves, it bridges the gap for a second. They share a memory of a lost pre-war era of elegance and quality. And the shopgirl responds with a professional compliment. Madame's hands are so slender.
But the connection is broken by a wave of compassion. Clarissa looks at the woman and realizes she might be standing there in agony, and it's this sudden awareness of the physical reality of this working woman's life.
That compassion makes her speak out. She asks the girl if she gets tired, when her holiday is.
The girl says September, when we're not so busy.
And Clarissa's internal comparison is just swift and brutal. When Clarissa's class is busy, they are in the country, or shooting. The girl gets a fortnight at Brighton, in some stuffy lodging.
And that detail about the landlady taking the sugar, it's just so miserable. It grounds the girl's experience in this petty, deprived reality.
And this recognition sparks a powerful, charitable impulse in Clarissa. She thinks nothing would be easier than to send her to Mrs. Lumley's right in the country.
But the impulse is crushed almost immediately. She remembers Dick's lesson from their honeymoon, the folly of giving impulsively.
Right, the pragmatic capitalist philosophy. Dick stressed that individual kindness is less important than grand systems, than getting trade with China.
And Dick's pragmatism wins. She concludes he was right. She accepts the painful separation. The girl has her job, her place, her own sorrows quite separate. And the poetry comes back to seal off the pain. And now can never mourn, can never more.
This acceptance of futility leads directly to a massive crisis of belief. As the glove is drawn off, leaving that white powder on her arm, she thinks the whole effort seems utterly futile.
And then the big one. Simply one doesn't believe anymore in God.
The loss of faith is tied directly to seeing suffering and realizing that individual kindness is considered foolish in the face of these huge systems. If that's how the world works, what's left to believe in?
So she grapples with this by thinking of practical resilience. She thinks of Lady Bexborough, who opened a bazaar with the telegram about her son's death in her hand. If Dick died, Clarissa would go on, not because of faith, but for another reason.
For the sake of others. That's her conclusion. She has to maintain the structure, the facade of belief and conduct for everyone else. She even thinks the girl would be much more unhappy if she didn't believe. So Clarissa must perform composure to keep the world running.
The price of the gloves is settled, and she lands on her final hard-won conclusion. For one doesn't live for oneself.
Right after she resolves this huge internal crisis, the material world outside her fails. The other customer, the vacant lady, tugs her glove, and it's split.
A material failure. The shopwoman tries to explain it away. A technical fault, a drop of acid in tanning.
But the customer is outraged at the price. An awful swindle to ask £2.10.
But the real truth, the deep truth, comes from the humble shopgirl. She apologizes to Clarissa and says the one line that explains everything.
Gloves have never been quite so reliable since the war.
That's it, isn't it? That one line. The entire material and economic breakdown of a society in a single sentence. Even the luxury goods that define her class are no longer dependable. The slow stain is real. It's in the leather.
And in that moment, Clarissa finally places the other customer. It's Miss Anstruther. And the description is so sharp, like a sergeant drawing.
Meaning she's a perfect, maybe even menacing example of a certain type of powerful, demanding socialite. A type Sargent would have captured with ruthless honesty.
You can tell from her voice she's used to being obeyed. She represents this entitled, commanding part of society.
And Clarissa's left waiting, tapping her finger on the counter, going back to her mantra about sacrifice and death. Fear no more the heat of the sun.
She connects her own small impatience to the massive sacrifice of the war. Thousands of young men had died that things might go on. It justifies everything. But even her discipline is wearing thin. She's getting impatient with the slow-coach shopgirl.
And then it happens. The chaos that's been humming outside all this time finally bursts in. A violent explosion in the street outside.
It's the unpredictable, violent world crashing into this sheltered little shop.
And the reactions tell you everything. The shopwomen cowered behind the counters, a pure physical, instinctual reaction to trauma.
But Clarissa, who has spent this entire hour disciplining her inner world, does not cower. Her physical response is the absolute climax of her journey.
She is sitting very upright.
She chose her posture, and she maintains it, even when the world explodes. And then she makes the perfect final social gesture. She smiles at the other woman.
And she finally names her Miss Anstruther.
It's the ultimate triumph of discipline over instinct. The violent shock of the world makes everyone else crumble, but she asserts order. She asserts social knowledge. She remains upright, functional, and impeccable. She is saying, I know who you are, I know who I am, and we will continue with dignity no matter what happens outside that window.
So we've just followed this immense journey, from the fresh morning air to deep memories to national symbols, social critique, a crisis of faith, and finally, this violent jolt. All in 1 hour.
And I think the key takeaway here is the incredible tension Clarissa is constantly navigating. She's always being buffeted by these external forces, the legacy of the war, economic friction, social change, but she counters it all with this fierce internal discipline.
That idea that pride held her erect, the need to go on even without faith, the need to maintain composure for the sake of others, that's her resilience. Her walk isn't just an errand, it's a performance of a vital social duty.
And her conclusion seems to be that the world, for better or worse, depends on people like her holding their posture, maintaining their rituals, even when the material world, like those faulty gloves in the spiritual world, are completely failing them. She is actively choosing dignity over despair.
Absolutely. And I think the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, based on this single intense hour, is this. We saw Clarissa's mind constantly shifting between the immense scope of empire and death and the tiny detail of a perfect glove with pearl buttons. So what does it mean for us today, when our own small personal errands are constantly being interrupted by the massive unspoken tragedies of the world that feel like they're right outside the shop door? And how much of our own energy is spent just trying to maintain that upright composure in the face of it all?